Good morning. You're watching Businessworld Live. I'm Jes Delos Santos, and here are the biggest stories this Friday. The government is now preparing to extend aid to affected sectors as pump prices are expected to rise further. That's on the back of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But how can the Philippines weather the effects of the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine? A presidential advisor says the answer lies in strengthening our domestic economy. Financial markets are closed today in commemoration of the 1986 EDSA People Power Revolution. The local bourse ended the trading week in a bloodbath, sinking by more than 2%. Analysts say the tense developments in Ukraine have rattled investors. The United States is ramping up sanctions against Russia while China refuses to condemn Moscow's attacks on Ukraine. We begin our broadcast with the government now preparing to disburse billions in pesos worth of aid as fuel prices are expected to soar higher. That's on the back of the conflict between oil producer Russia and Ukraine. The Development Budget Coordination Committee said it would hand out at least 2.5 billion pesos in fuel subsidies to the transport sector, while 500 million pesos worth of fuel discounts will be given to the agriculture sector. Latest data from the Energy Department showed that pump prices have increased by up to 11 pesos per liter since the start of the year. Secretary Alfonso Cusi says global oil prices are expected to increase over the next few days. He noted that the Philippines does not directly import oil from Russia or Ukraine, but imports finished products from countries which get crude from Russia. The DBCC said it would also closely monitor oil prices as Brent crude surged over $100 per barrel for the first time since 2014, after Russia launched its attack on Ukraine on Thursday. Meanwhile, an economist warns that if the conflict between Russia and Ukraine escalates into a full-blown war, the resulting crisis could become bigger than the COVID-19 pandemic. Here's the full report.
As the world watches the current developments in Europe on Russia's invasion of Ukraine, stocks plummeted as investors react negatively to the attacks. Crude prices are affected too, as its price per barrel reached $100, or more than 5,000 pesos. And it is expected to rise even further as tensions in the region escalate even more.
They're even talking about $120 per barrel. I think we can expect that things will get worse before it gets better.
That's why pump prices in the Philippines are now up to 70 pesos per liter, with more price increases expected in the coming weeks. This will cause a domino effect in prices of basic commodities. The Department of Trade and Industry assures the public that there will be no hikes as of now. But economist Emmanuel Leico says that once a full-blown war has started, the crisis it will make is much worse than the pandemic.
The crisis that is in front of us right now is about to hit us really big, probably bigger than the COVID-19. This time, once the prices go up, the prices go up overnight.
Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship Joey Concepcion says that we have yet to fully recover from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. That's why the economy must be expanded further as soon as possible should a war be imminent. Sam Tirante, we are One News.
How can the country cushion the blow of Russia's all-out invasion in Ukraine? And how exactly is the private sector gearing up for this? To find out, we have on the show Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship Joey Concepcion. Good morning, Sir Joey. Thank you for joining us today.
Good morning.
All right, even before this blew up into an all-out war, we've already seen oil prices and commodity prices inch up. But really, give us, apart from that, how much is at risk here? How big is our exposure in Russia and Ukraine in terms of trade?
Well, let me give you an idea. No? The prices of wheat in November 2021 was about 271. No? It's now up to $441. No? That's about a 52% increase. No? And the Ukraine supplies basically 20% of the world's wheat supply. No, so that's pretty serious. Although we buy our wheat from America, most of that, but definitely Ukraine will have an influence. Really, if a full-blown war happens, then you can expect supply disruption. Even skim milk, for example, from 3,200 to 4,450. Sugar from 44 to 64. So I have the list of commodities here that have gone up from last year to this year. So they're way beyond the 30, 40, 50%. No? And that's why I'm saying that it's very important that we have to strengthen our economy, because a strong Philippine economy can weather this crisis better than a weak Philippine economy. And as you know, Secretary Dominguez said that we have spent close to 2 trillion pesos already. And if inflation does happen, then chances interest rates will move up to curb the inflation. So this could be like a storm, no, brewing right after the pandemic. I believe during the Spanish flu, there was a war before the Spanish flu. Here, I hope it doesn't happen, but this crisis in Ukraine and Russia could happen right after this pandemic. So it might be the reverse. God willing, it doesn't happen that way, because then we would like to, I mean, these inflationary increases will definitely affect our consumers, no?
Given that as well, I mean, like what you mentioned earlier, we are expecting supply disruptions here from the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. But how exactly as well do you see this impacting trade in terms of imports and exports?
Well, I don't think that we will not have enough supply. No, we have secured most of the companies here who are into different businesses have secured and have hedged, no, to some degree. No, in our case, we're quite covered for maybe up to 60%, 70% of the year's raw material requirements that we would need, from milk to wheat, etc., not sugar. But not everybody is capable of doing that. No, so let's just hope that the Ukraine-Russian conflict does not spread to the rest of Europe. No, I mean, if that happens, then it can further escalate into something really serious, no, and affect the entire world. And of course, the Philippines, we buy oil from all these countries, and of course our wheat supply, our milk, all of that is coming from America, from Europe. So yes, this is a serious concern, no? As we exit the pandemic and move towards an endemic, and that's why we have to strengthen our MSMEs, no? This is something that we may have to brace, no? I mean, it's happening as we speak, no? So in the next couple of days, we will know whether this will really go into a full-blown war. No? And I pray that we don't move towards that direction.
Okay, now should this at least, I mean, hypothetically speaking, if this enters into a full-blown war, I mean, as it is now, we're seeing global price of oil soaring further, commodity prices likely to inch up higher here. As early as now, you have transport groups calling for fare hikes. The worst-case scenario, is it likely as well that there would be cause for wage adjustments as a second-round effect of the conflict?
Yeah, so it will go back to that. No, if you have all of this inflation, really prices going up, and workers will call for wage increases. So that will follow again. No? So this is going to be I mean, our economists can predict what will happen. No? And it's a scary picture. I'd like to put it that way. And that's why I believe we should open the economy immediately, no, so that all of the businesses can prepare, no, and get themselves moving. With inflation going up, prices of oil going up, of course, fuel prices and travel will be more expensive. So people will also cut back on their travel and their mobility. That's the way I look at it, no. We will have workers asking for wage hikes if we get to these levels of inflation. No? So let's hope that this does not escalate further. No, but it looks like it's moving in that direction.
Okay. When you say, Sir Joey, fully reopen the economy, does that automatically mean that we should at least de-escalate to alert level 1 or letting go of the alert level system altogether?
De-escalating to alert level 1 is something that I think we have to do immediately, and to allow businesses to really start uh, uh, making money so that they can shore up the reserves, so that when this crisis, assuming gets full blown, that the Philippine economy is better prepared. No? At this point in time, we borrowed a lot of money for the health, no? And the vaccines and all of that, and we will have to pay that obligation. So how will the government raise taxes when you have this massive increases in all commodities, which will eventually be passed to the consumer? No.
Now, your call for de-escalating to alert level 1, is this countrywide, or are you just talking about a specific area, particularly Metro Manila? You juxtapose that as well with the IATF's new metric saying that at least 80% of a particular area's population should be vaccinated before we de-escalate to alert level 1.
I agree with that. I think we should focus on the alert level 1 can be for areas that are, to my mind, 70%. But if it's 80%, well and good, that's fine. So at 80%, then they can move to alert level 1. Areas that have not reached alert level 1, then they will have to stay at alert level 2. But with the situation brewing up, we really have to try to seriously look at helping our MSMEs brace up, no, for this situation. When you have this kind of hyperinflation that will hit us, I mean, it's all over. It's not just fuel; it's every commodity. Then what will happen is prices of goods will go up, and unfortunately, not everybody can absorb that price increase. No? So consumption will go down, and that is also not good. So it's a challenging situation. I just hope that cooler heads will prevail in this situation that's happening in Ukraine and Russia, because we don't want to get there. No, it's a cause of concern, because this kind of inflation, you can't just pass all of these price increases to the consumer. People will not have the money to be able to afford a massive increase. So that is something to really think, and that is something worrying. And that's why I'm saying the best we can do is strengthen the economy, whatever we can do at this point in time.
Okay, while you're not alone in pushing for a de-escalation to alert level 1, I mean, NCR mayors, for one, are also making that call. But for one, you have the Interior Department cautioning against loosening restrictions, especially considering that we are in the thick of the campaign season. How do you balance that need to fully reopen with fears of another surge of infections?
Well, I think mandatory wearing a mask should be in all these campaign rallies. No, that should be really done. I know it's election season, but we have to realize, no, that if we don't open up, then we will be making it will be a bigger problem, no, for the economy. So we there is no really choice, especially with the situation that we're now facing now. I think the parameters are clear. If 80% is the benchmark for LGUs can open up if they're 80% vaccinated, that's okay, because I think many of, especially NCR, is way beyond that. They're at 100%. So many areas are 70%, and some of them are surpassed 80%. But yes, there are some areas that are very low in vaccination rates, so they can wait and stay at alert level 2 till such a time that they're able to attain those benchmarks. And I fully support the IATF decision on that.
All right, definitely a careful balancing act there for the government, considering, of course, the situation we're in. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Again, Presidential Advisor for Entrepreneurship, Joey Concepcion. Thank you, Sir Joey. Good morning and stay safe.
Thank you.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said around 137 Ukrainians died on the first day of Russia's invasion. International news agency AFP also reports that over 300 have been injured in Ukraine following the large-scale attack from Russian forces. Zelensky has already signed a decree ordering a general mobilization of Ukraine's military and calling up all the country's conscripts and reservists. The UN Human Rights Office, meanwhile, condemns the invasion, noting that it violated international laws. Spokesperson Ravina Shamdasani says a UN human rights monitoring mission remained in Ukraine and continues to monitor the situation closely.
UN High Commissioner for Human Rights Michelle Bachelet is deeply alarmed about the Russian Federation's military attacks against Ukraine. This military action clearly violates international law and puts at risk countless civilian lives. It must be immediately halted.
The United States government is now ramping up sanctions against Russia, but China, on the other hand, refuses to condemn Moscow's attacks on its neighbor Ukraine. More of that story in this Bloomberg report.
We're going to begin with U.S. President Joe Biden, who has imposed more sanctions on Russia with the aim of inflicting a severe economic cost. Speaking from the White House, Biden laid out penalties, including blocking major Russian banks and cutting the country off from chips and advanced technology. However, Biden is not barring Russia from the SWIFT international banking network for now. Sources tell us the White House is also holding off on sanctions hitting aluminum.
We will limit Russia's ability to do business in dollars, euros, pounds, and yen to be part of the global economy. We'll limit their ability to do that. We're going to stunt the ability to finance and grow the Russian military. We're going to impose major, and we're going to impair their ability to compete in high-tech 21st century economy. We've already seen the impact of our actions on Russia's currency and the ruble, which early today hit its weakest level ever in history.
China is refusing to condemn Russia's attack on Ukraine. Instead, the foreign ministry repeated criticism that the U.S. was to blame for hyping the prospect of a war in recent days. A spokesperson repeatedly sidestepped questions about whether Beijing sees Moscow's actions as an invasion. She also reiterated the West's need to address what she called President Putin's legitimate security concerns. Russia's invasion is complicating efforts to revive the Iran nuclear deal, with tensions between Moscow and Washington at risk of spilling over into talks. That's according to Ireland, which has been appointed facilitator of the negotiations at the UN Security Council. The Vienna talks are currently in a holding pattern, with Iran's negotiator returning to Tehran to consult with leaders. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Bloomberg Quick Take, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Vonnie Quinn. This is Bloomberg.
Meanwhile, the local bourse is closed today in commemoration of the 36th anniversary of the People Power. With this, the market has closed the trading week yesterday at 7,212, sinking by more than 2%. The broader all shares index, meanwhile, fell by 75 points or 1.91% to 3,842. Analysts attributed the drop to investor sentiments over Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Pausing for a quick break, coming right up. Roads out of Ukraine's capital are gridlocked as more residents flee to the city to seek a safer ground. More of that and other stories when Businessworld Live returns. Stay with us. You're still watching Business World Live here on One News. I'm Jes Delos Santos. Journalist Marina Chankova woke up to bombings and sirens as Russia began its long-anticipated invasion of Ukraine. Here's her journey fleeing the capital Kyiv to the western city of Lviv. Let's watch this.
In 20 minutes, we took all our stuff and begin our trip to Lviv. This morning, I woke up at 5 o'clock because I heard the sound of the bombs. First of all, I didn't understand what was happening, and I saw that my WhatsApp chat and Facebook scroll was just like firing, and everyone was writing just like, "Did you hear that? Did you hear that?" And in this moment I understood that it was really bombs, and not only in my district, in the other districts of Kyiv too. So I was with my mom, and in 20 minutes we took all our stuff and begin our trip to Lviv. My mom is driving now. So the Lviv is the western part of Ukraine. We hope that we will be safer there. I saw a lot of people were driving the cars, the full cars with the babies, little babies, with the cats, dogs, and full of stuff. Of course, there were great traffic jams outside the Kyiv, and the awful situation on the petrol stations. Everyone wants to buy some petrol and maybe some water. As usually, it's taking like 5 hours to reach to Lviv, but now we are moving more than 8 hours and we're still on the road. I also have one stop on the petrol station, and everyone are frightened really, but everyone helping each other. If someone needs some water or some help with the baby, everyone helping each other. During my road, a lot of friends from Kyiv called me. They asked to help me with the apartment in Lviv or in the western part of Ukraine. So I was just like calling, helping, finding some flats. Of course, my house is also open for them, and some of them are moving to me already. We saw a lot of Ukrainian militaries on our road to Lviv, and it was very, very interesting feeling because we saw our army. We was a little bit frightened, you know, but all people were saying hello to them and showing their respect. We believe and we hope that they will protect and save us.
Here are the other headlines we're keeping our eyes on. A New York-based market research firm says the Philippine economy will likely grow by 6% this year, even if it remains vulnerable to pandemic-related disruptions. This projection is higher than the firm's previous 5.5% forecast, but is still lower than the government's 7 to 9% target for 2022. A global source partner says the Philippine economy will likely grow at a faster pace this year as the country expands its vaccination coverage. The firm says economic growth could be supported by higher confidence that COVID-19 is becoming more endemic, which would push recovery in tourism and education. Still, the firm believes obstacles to economic growth remain, including weak labor markets, a reduced fiscal and monetary policy, and supply chain disruptions. The growing number of poor in the Philippines is facing larger disaster and climate risks. This is according to a consultant's report for the Asian Development Bank. A report made by UP Professor of Governance and Public Administration Christopher Berce showed that the urban poor are vulnerable to floods, landslides, and earthquakes. The study emphasized a need for targeted social interventions at the city level to mitigate this increased vulnerability. These interventions include a closer investigation of the actual condition of certain cities, starting with those that have higher poverty incidence and poor social protection. Now on to some updates on the corporate front. Metro Pacific Tollways Corporation, the parent company of NLEX Corporation, is expecting traffic volume across its network of expressways to return to pre-pandemic levels this year. MPTC President and CEO Rodrigo Franco says the tollway company is seeing a 10% growth in traffic volume this year due to less mobility restrictions. MPTC has also officially introduced its own smartphone application that houses the company's mobility solutions for customers. The app will be called MPT Drive Hub and will be available for download on March 1st. Its key features include RFID transactions, trip planning, and roadside assistance. And those are the biggest headlines from the corporate and economic front this Friday, February 25, 2022. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe. Philippines, I'm Jes Delos Santos. We are One News. Have a great weekend.